So far we've looked at ellipses, but we also have a couple more options in terms of shapes. So for example, if I wanted to draw a line, I could write line, and then this takes 4 separate commands: an X position, a Y position, a second X position, and a second Y position. So these two are going to be the first coordinate, and these are going to be the second coordinate. So if I come back here and I want to draw a diagonal line, so I'm going to start at 0, 0. So it's going to start at the very top of my sketch, and then this is going to go all the way to the end. So 600, 600. Now we're going to get an error here. We're actually not going to see it. If I run this again, we're not going to see it because I have no stroke applied directly above it. So I need to come back in and say stroke, and let's do just a black line. And so we can see it more clearly, stroke weight. Let's do 10. Now notice this is going over our blue shape. And that's because whatever happens last is whatever you see first. Now, looking at this, I wrote 600, 600. There's actually an easier way to do this. Whenever you set your initial width and height, those then become stored inside variables. So instead of 600, I can write width, and notice this turns a pink color. That's a built-in variable inside the program of processing. So there's a stored value, width and height. Command T to space out my elements correctly, and Command R to rerun this, and notice nothing changes. If I did the same thing here, but I start in the opposite direction, width, height, which are equal to 600 and 600, 0, 0. Well, it's going to go backwards. So let's actually do from this point down here, which would be 0 on X and height. And it's going to come up to this top corner, which would be the width, and 0 on our y-axis. So this would be width. Now I'll get it to be an X. So 0 height, 0 on the X, and height, so 600. And then this is 0 at the Y and 600 on the width. So 600, 0, because X goes first. So those are lines. You can also do rectangles. So RECT for rectangle. And then I'm going to draw 100, 100. So it's going to start at position 100, 100. And I'm going to give it a width of 100, 100. So it'll be 100 pixels wide by 100 pixels tall. And let's give it a fill of white. And notice that this has been drawn from this corner point. Let's actually give it make it a little bit longer. So this is the width, this is the height. So let's make this 300 so we can see that a little bit more clearly. So you can see it started at 100, 100, went over 300 pixels and went down 100 because the height is 100, the width is 300. Now, say I wanted to put a square or a rectangle directly in the middle. I could say RECT, width divided by 2, height divided by 2. And that's because width divided by 2 is equal to 300, height divided by 2 is equal to 300. And then I'm going to make this 50 by 50 and turn my stroke weight down to 2, just so it's a little bit skinnier. Now here you see it drew it from the corner. So what I can do is change the mode. I can change how that's drawn by doing something like rectMode, and this is another built-in function which you can pass to it in all caps center. And that's going to change the point around which it's drawn. So now, rather than drawing this rectangle from the corner, it's going to draw it out from the center. So now it's drawing it out directly from the center point. And I can select this, comment it out, Command R, and now we're not going to see that one anymore. I did get rid of this fill. All right, there we go. So these are some more shapes that you can do. There's also triangles, there's begin shape, there is end shape. And this is where you should really be going into some of the elements here. So if I come back to the reference and look at 2D primitives, these are some of the other options you have. Triangles, for example. There are also options like begin shape and end shape, which allow you to create specific shapes. So if I go to begin shape, you can create a shape by doing the command for begin shape, and then you give it a bunch of vertices or vertexes, and then you can end the shape. So it'll create one solid form. And this allows you to get a little bit more variation and creativity in the thing that you're making. One last note here is if you wanted to have opacity in your shapes or opacities in your forms, you can do things like adding a second variable to, or second attribute to either fill or a fourth number to fill. So for example, right now I have fill at 255, which is full white. If I give it a second number, something like 100, then we're going to see this shape take on a little bit of opacity. And that's because opacity here is on a scale, again, from 0 to 255. And fill can take one variable, two variables, three variables, or four variables. So for example, if I did 100, 100, we're going to see this become red. And if I want it to become semi-transparent, I can add in another variable, such as 100, or another attribute, such as 100, and now we see it's gained some opacity to it. And now we see that purple happening on top. And so there's another way or element that you can bring in terms of color to your color space.